Hey everybody, this is Zach with Luck of the Draw and the Luck of the Draw podcast. Today we have our first special guest outside of the Luck of the Draw team, joining myself and co-founder Kyle Farnsworth, the one and only Spook Spann. If you don't know who he is, well, you must be living under a rock. So we're going to enlighten you and we're going to have some fun this evening. So without further ado, Spook, thanks for being on. Kyle, thanks for taking some time. Let's have some fun.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, this is a pleasure and an honor to have someone of your status, in the hunting world in this war period. So, no, just grateful to have you join our little podcast, and we appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I enjoy it.
Start off, I know a lot of our podcasts, it's like our show, family, God and all that country and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
And, obviously, we have our first hunting stories, kind of who got us started and into the hunting world and showed us to those. So, for me, it was obviously my dad, and he took me out in the woods and stuff.
Yeah.
So, how did you get involved in
Same
hunting?
way. I mean, grew up in the country. My dad and my uncles all hunted, and all my buddies hunted, and so I never remember a life of not hunting and fishing. My dad was. I mean, I've got a picture of me when I was 18 months. Sitting by a little 4-point that my dad killed on the back of his old truck, So I grew up bass fishing, quail hunting. We had bird dogs from the time I was a baby, so we did a lot of quail hunting back then. We had a lot of quail. My dad wasn't a big deer hunter, but he did deer hunt. But we had an 800-acre farm here. I grew up in the sawmill lumber business. That's what my dad did. And we had 800 acres here at the sawmill. And so I did a lot of my hunting out there. And when I was probably in middle school, around eighth grade, I let a couple of big bucks get away just out of unexperienced, not being experienced. And it really, like, just seeing them and they really just it just triggered something in me, and I didn't get to do it as like I wanted to, because I was equally obsessed with playing ball. So a lot like yourself, I played all the sports, and my younger years, I thought I was going to be for back then, definitely not now, but back then, O.J. Simpson was the man, And so, I was called the White OJ back in the day. And so, nothing to brag about now, but back then it was a pretty big deal, So thought that I was going to. And then when I got in high school, I became obsessed with basketball. And so then I poured my heart and soul into it. But I killed a big buck my junior year of high school and a big one my senior year. And so, I knew when I got out of college, I mean, I just went, really hardcore trying to kill better deer. When I was really young, it wasn't necessarily about quality, it was more about quantity. And then as I got older, I just started really focusing on quality.
I mean, what, you have like over 50, 170-inch deer, 13, probably more now, over 200-inch. I mean, that's just insane, those kind of numbers. I mean, obviously you need, obviously land, quality food and stuff like that. Of those deer, is there any certain things that stand out that they all had in common, or are they all different?
So a lot, obviously, a lot or most of the deer came from the Midwest. So, you're looking at Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, occasionally Texas, and Illinois. Illinois has been a really good state for me, and Western Kentucky. So I started doing a lot of research on areas that produced big deer. And we really got into the waterfowl hunting in the 80s and 90s. And so I ended up finding a lot of really good places just through waterfowl connections. Guys that loved to waterfowl hunt didn't necessarily deer hunt, so they would give me information about a refuge or something that I could find adjoining property to hunt. So I really started focusing in on trying to find properties around the states that were known for having real big bucks, but then taking it to another level where I was trying to get close to places that didn't allow any hunting. Because you had to get deer in that 5 to 7, 8 year age class. And see, I grew up hunting next to a state park here in Tennessee. So I generally, as a general rule, on the average, I consistently killed better deer than everybody around me because I was planting all these food plots outside the park and drawing these deer off, And so I started taking that formula to other places. And that's when I really started becoming ultra successful and finding big deer was, targeting those specific spots.
Like, what people say about real estate, it's location, location, location.
That's it. I mean, here's always been my saying. You can take the best hunter and put him in a bad place on bad property, and he's not going to do very well. You can take a guy who's very inexperienced hunter who don't know that much about it. You put him on a prime piece of property, he's going to do well. So you take somebody who's a pretty knowledgeable, experienced hunter and put them on a really good piece of property, or you develop piece of property, which is something I love to do. And I've bought and sold a lot of farms over the last 20, 25 years. Then you learn how to enhance the property and yourself and the things that you need to do to make it the best it can be. And that's probably one of the most gratifying things about killing a giant buck is killing it on your own property that you've managed and passed up a deer 2 or 3 years in a row, passed up a deer that most people would have died to shoot, which was very hard, but then it ended up rewarding you the next season. And, there are a lot of times when you pass them up and you don't ever see them again, or they get killed, or they get run over, or they just disappear. But those special times when one does make it and you are able to get him makes it just priceless.
What you were saying, yeah, being able to have your own piece of property and be able to manage it the way you do, be able to see those deer grow up and pass on them, like you said. Oh, geez, man, he's 170 right now, but I know if he's only a 4.5, and if he gets that age,
exactly,
he's going to be a monster.
Yeah.
And just be able to do that time and time again. And, yes, you take that chance of someone else getting them or he dies off, but that's like what you're saying now. The older we get, the more, sometimes the same way. When I was younger, if it was brown, that's down.
Exactly.
now,
just the redneck way back in the day. Yeah.
I know it. Now it's, if it's not something that's big as it is on the wall I have now, I'm not going to really mess with it. It's just,
Yeah, and and please understand, anybody that would hear this, that I don't blame anybody for shooting any deer that they're happy with. I mean, everybody needs to enjoy it. They don't need to feel pressure because so-and-so killed one this big, or so-and-so, a neighbor decided to pass this deer up. I mean, everybody is in a different place in their life when it comes to where they're at in their deer hunting career. I was able to do it at a time where I could slowly progress and I told my first cameraman, I was like, oh, I'll never pass up a booner. Well, that very season, I passed up 2 in 3 days because there was a 200. Yeah. I know, right? We were in Kansas and there was a 200 there in the area. We were on a great food source. We had milo and corn and wheat field, and the buck had been seen all around where we were at, within a mile of where we were at. And, the first 3 days I passed up a 170 and a 180, but they were both 4-year-olds, and I knew the 200 was there. We had great weather. Everything was great. Now I ended up shooting a deer on about the 6th or 7th day that was 186 that was 6.5 years old. And so he just had the look, it was a big basket, and was just a gorgeous deer. I actually ended up taking my dad in and shooting the one deer that was a 170 something a couple of days later, which was really awesome because my dad was starting to get to the age where it was getting harder for him to go. And this deer had gotten really consistent, and we videoed it, and it was just a priceless hunt. So it worked out really good. But yeah, it's hard when you pass a 170 or 180 up, and then he either gets killed or run over or just disappears. And I can say that over the years, there's probably been more bucks that I passed up that I didn't get than the ones that I did. But I don't know which ones those are. I don't always know which ones those are going to be. So my thing is, if I pass up 2 or 3 a year like that, and I get a chance at one of them the next year and I get him, I did good. So that's kind of the way I approach it.
Sure. Yeah, and you have to know what's in the area too. Yeah, I mean, you can't be waiting around on 200-inch deer when nothing's ever shown up, and only like like you were saying. Also, everybody's trophy is different.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always try to be supportive and complimentary. I think that's one of the worst things that I see in the hunting industry is that everybody's always trying to discredit somebody because of the weapon they choose or the way they hunt or the size deer they shoot. I mean, we as hunters need to just support every hunter. And because everybody has different financial means, everybody has different time restraints, different jobs, different family requirements, all the things that go on in life that are much more important than hunting. And we need to, for the sake of hunting, we just need to support each other. If you want to go out and fill your tag with 3 or 2 or whatever the limit is in your state, 1.5-year-old bucks, that's not what I choose to do, but I'm not going to talk bad about you if you choose to do that. That's not what it's about. And I think that's hurt our hunting world because too many people feel pressure like, well, I gotta shoot a 150 or I gotta shoot a 160 or I gotta kill a booner or nobody cares. That you shouldn't worry about what anybody else thinks. Just go out and enjoy the hunt. I mean, I've caught my time. I still, to this day, after all these years and all the hunting, a big doe, a big dry doe comes out, and I'm like, oh man, I want to shoot her,
Uh-huh.
And I'm all about it up until the time I think about how much trouble I got to go through to get her out and get her to the field dress and get her to the packing house, and the fact that the big buck I'm hunting might be just over the next hill, and so I end up not shooting a lot of times. But that urge is still there, and I actually laugh at myself when that happens.
If we end up doing, because I think I've been there too, and I think if we lose that love of just the hunt as opposed to, oh, I got to kill this big deer, we've lost it, because we have to get back to just enjoying the outdoors and being out there.
Exactly.
No matter if we kill anything or not, because it's not about the kill, it's about the hunt and about the experience.
Exactly. And I mean, I get the biggest thrill out of manipulating the animal by with the food plots and the strategy of creating habitat and bedding and browse and doing controlled burns and warm season grasses and the managerial part of it. And when you see the fruits of your labor and you're sitting there watching the sun's coming up and on good frosty morning, and all of a sudden a real nice buck steps out of the switchgrass into the edge of the cornfield, the gratification that comes from that is hard to put into words, and it's like throwing that last strike on the 3rd out in the 9th inning, or hitting a 3 in the to win the game at the buzzer or whatever. It's just something about it. All the preparation and work you went to get to that point for that 5 seconds of glory is a lot of. get a lot of satisfaction out of that process.
Makes it worth it.
Yes, yes. And even on top of that is when you take somebody like a wounded soldier or your son or your daughter or a friend or your dad or your spouse, and you take them and they get to experience it and reap the benefits, is very fulfilling. There's a lot of pride that comes along with being a part of that.
A good experience from that this year, I believe. Mentioned Zach, with your kids out hunting.
Yeah, man, it's my little hunting buddy. She's 7. She's been hunting with me since she's about 4. And the dedication I see in this kid at such a young age to be willing to get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, sit out there for 11 o'clock. We're at it, we're hustling, and just making memories together. I mean, she shot her first button buck this year, and she was just, I mean, tickled to death about it. It wasn't anything
That's awesome.
massive, but
Yeah.
I noticed it as we were coming up to it. I was like, why don't you check its head? And she was, oh, it's a buck. And I'm like, she's been wanting it. And this is the thing about her, she's willing to pass up on does last year to wait for that buck, and so
Right.
to see the dedication and commitment out of a 7-year-old, it definitely, one, is a reality check for me, but even just bringing her along. I was telling you earlier, we were down in Athens at John Neese's preserve, and she got to come on a ram hunt with me. And, she got to, spot the rams before we saw them and, watch it all unfold and, be a part of that whole process. So, I mean, it really is a very special thing. And I don't know that you can find these kind of memories outside of hunting. It's
Right.
like anything else I've ever seen.
That's exactly right.
To your dad, and your hunt, well, almost about 20 years ago, when I texted you when I was watching the TV show about when you guys, I think we were hunting Marco Polo sheep out, was it Kyrgyzstan or something, and you guys had a crazy adventure.
Oh, wow. It's looking back, it just seems like a dream. It's like it wasn't even real. But yeah, we were on a Marco Polo sheep hunt in Kyrgyzstan. Had a great hunt. We were coming out from the Tin Shin Mountains right on the China border. It's very desolate, high altitude, and it just started snowing when we were, and the timing was just crazy. I mean, if we had have left the day before or the next day, it would have been completely different. But we couldn't have picked a worse day and a worse time to have left camp. And we were found ourselves in the middle of a blizzard, and we just got stranded in 3 feet of snow, and we couldn't find the trail, or the truck was pushing snow, and we just couldn't find our way. So there we were, stuck in 3 feet of snow at about 13,000 feet elevation with 40 below zero, and the only food we had, we took ibex and cut it up in little squares and slid it on a clothes hanger wire and cooked it with a blowtorch.
Oh my God.
That's what we ate for 3 days.
Jeez. Oh my goodness.
And the rescue helicopter finally comes in to pick us up, and it was snowing, but it wasn't bad. It was like the clouds were still up kind of high, and so the visibility was good enough for him to get in there. But about 10 minutes of the flight, supposedly what was reported is the pilot got vertigo when he lost perception of the skyline and the snow line, because there's no trees, there's no timber, there's no reference, everything's just white, and he flew it into the top of the mountain. And to think back on that, to think that the pilot is like 4 feet from me, and the guy sitting next to me, and they both got killed. and me and my dad survived is just, I don't know, it's incomprehensible, really.
That show, and I was like, holy crap. I was like, there's no way anybody survived. And I was like, wait a second, I know that guy. That's Spook. And it just blew my mind. And, that's just a crazy, hand of God and it's lucky right there.
Yeah, it was the Border Patrol guys from the U.S. that ended up getting us out from the helicopter crash. They told us at a later date, so we can't figure out if you're the luckiest two guys we've ever met or the unluckiest two guys we've ever met. I said, well, I guess it's both, but it was a crazy thing to go through. And I'll tell you something that's really weird. And you mentioned God earlier, and I grew up in the church and really, have a serious lifelong appreciation for being raised in a Christian family. But I just thought this was really weird. So that when we got on the helicopter, my dad always, when we're somewhere or flying or riding, we always sit together, your dad. It's like you would be going on a trip with your buddy or your wife or your kid. You would be sitting with them, When I got on the helicopter, I sat down in the front seat and my dad walked past me. This was one of those big M80 Russian helicopters. And he walked past me and he kind of hesitated and he walked about 2 or 3 seats past me. And I was like, that's weird, And then for the little guy, as one of the guides was sitting in the seat next to me where dad would have been, he's one of the guys that got killed. And, so it was just, really a blessing that dad chose not to sit there. And dad went to the part of the helicopter where it got really small. And when we hit, the pilot must have turned the helicopter a little bit right before we hit, because he was on the left, the pilot was on the left side of the cockpit, the co-pilot was on the right. So it hit on the left front side first because he was just smashed. And when it threw me up against the wall on the other side, and we had a 5-gallon drum of fuel, we had the sheet, guns, everything's in the helicopter, and none of it's strapped down. It's just rolling around. We're just rolling like a NASCAR at Talladega. But dad was in the smaller part of the helicopter, so he didn't get churned up in the back like he would have if he would have been sitting by me. So it really was a blessing that he didn't get hurt near as bad as I did, or get killed, of course. And then what's crazy though, Kyle, is that my dad passed away 16 years to the date after the day we crashed. We crashed on March 16th in 2004, and he passed away March 16th, 2020.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, just really crazy.
My dad just passed away about a month ago, and it's the memories that you go through, and it's tough.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we had just the most incredible experiences, and we switched roles in life from him taking me hunting when I was young to when we got older, I was taking him hunting, and so that was something that happened that was pretty gratifying. It was fun, and I remember my dad used to talk to my mom about it and how much he appreciated it and enjoyed it, and getting to see him kill his first grizzly bear and his first elk and his first mule deer and his first sheep and that kind of stuff was just priceless.
Also gets me another point. So with all these trips and everything you go to, I know you're big into fitness like I am and stuff. How big of a role do you think that plays in hunting and obviously going to those kind of places where you're 13,000 feet above and stuff like that, being in shape?
Well, I mean, it makes, when you're physically fit, it makes the hunt so much more enjoyable because so many guys get in these situations where they're so miserable during the hunt, they can't enjoy it. And it will cost you success many times because if you're not in good enough shape to get up the mountain or walk or get over the hill or whatever it is, a lot of times by the time you get there, if you do make it, whatever you're after is going to be gone. And I've always said from the time I got out of college, I would never let my physical ability or the quality of my hunting gear get in the way of not being successful. If or being successful, if it's something that Mother Nature dishes out, there's nothing I can do about that. But anything that I can control, I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to be able to shoot. I'm going to be able to walk. I'm going to be able to run. I'm going to be able to I'm going to have my clothing's going to be good so I can withstand the weather, whatever the situation is, because I've seen guys go on $35,000-$40,000 sheep hunts and have to come home early because they didn't break their boots in, their toenails fell off. I mean, I'm serious. The guy's just miserable, has to cut his hunt short and come home. I mean, that's, you plan, you dream of this your whole life to go on a hunt like this, and then you fail to either get in shape or break your boots in or whatever, and you have to come home for something that simple.
Right.
And so I've seen that a lot. I've seen it happen a lot of times. Matter of fact, one of the number one complaints of outfitters is that by the time their client makes enough money to be able to go on the hunt, they're not physically able to do it.
Well, that's doesn't seem to be an issue for either one of you fellas. So kudos to sticking to your guns on that for sure. Do you have I mean, you guys both have shot some beautiful bucks. And Spook, I mean, it sounds like you've been all over the place hunting all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, I've talked with Kyle. Kyle, I don't know how many times I've asked you bucket list hunts. Hey, you know, would you want to hunt an elk? Would you want to hunt a moose? Things. What about a and he's pretty simple. I mean, what I think elk was one that you were kind of contemplating, Kyle. If an
I
opportunity
would
ever,
like to get one.
yeah. But
I'm pretty basic and boring. Whitetail turkey.
you could be like me and have dreams of grandeur. But Spook, what would you say your favorite hunt would be? Whether that be, just because of the history with the animal, where you were hunting, maybe because who you were hunting with.
Yeah, well, so I mean, obviously you cherish, like we talked about, hunts with your kids and family, but if I was just picking out one hunt that was the most memorable, special, exciting, adrenaline-filled hunt of my life, it's this buck right here behind me, and that's the buck I killed in Kansas at 6 yards off the ground, spot and stalked, and it was on the cover of Monster Bucks. I mean, I'll never in my life be able to match the intensity and the adrenaline and the way that happened, and it being my first 200 with a bow on the ground, and having to watch him for several minutes before getting the shot, and then getting to watch him afterwards and seeing him fall on film, just and being able to let all that energy and emotion come out. I mean, I'll never be able to match that hunt in any shape, form, or fashion. Well, I mean, other hunts that I really was special was, polar bear with a bow, a lion with a bow, a leopard, Cape buffalo with a bow. Those were awesome, adrenaline filled, you know, uh, uh, just I don't even know how to explain it, nervous type situations, but nothing as fulfilling and exciting as the adrenaline the energy that came out of me. And I'm a type, if I hit the winning 3-pointer of the game, I'm gonna crowd surf. We're gonna celebrate. My son's right the opposite. He can hit it and he'll look at you and go and walk off. Man, I'm yelling, screaming, high-fiving. We're going all out celebration. So that particular deer was just will always be my, number one hunt.
Kyle, what about you? I know you've got some beautiful deer. I think the one I show people the most is probably, it was like, what, 220 and a half, that one in Illinois.
I said no. That was a very good deer too. But I think probably the first good deer I shot from my family's farm in Missouri. Back then we used to do deer drives, so which made it a little bit more complicated and difficult.
That's challenging.
So yeah, so I'm one of the shooters, and everybody's pushing through this timber and this big old buck. He's palmated on one side. I think he was about a 12-pointer. I think didn't score that much, but for me, I think it's maybe scored 135. But he was just real pretty. He was palmated on one side, split brows, and I think a mainframe 5 on one side. But anyway, he came off the ridge, came running down the hill, and I was crapping my pants. And I tried to get on this deer running full speed, shoot, miss. I'm like, oh gosh, shoot, miss. All right, I have one more shot, and he's just coming through the timber. I was like, all right, as soon as I see him come through, I'm just going to let it go. Hit him in the neck and drop him. I run over to him. I'm happier than a pig in the mud and jumping up and down. And it was with my dad too, so that was made it more special as well. And I was like, this is one of my first big deer. It was the first one I ever got mounted, I believe too. So that's probably one of my better stories. I have, of course, bigger deer, but that one was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'd say for me, it was probably the first buck I ever killed. I started hunting at about 17. My uncle got me into it and had this buck that I grunted in. He'd come down this hill into the ravine and he was starting to go away. And I grunted him in right under my stand, almost completely, vertical. And I didn't quite compensate for that straight down shot. And I hit no man's land and never found him. I took some time off after that just to basically improve. And then we moved up here to Michigan. And the property we had at the time, there would be deer out there in this little grassy area. They'd come through. And there was a doe and 2 yearlings that were out there pretty religiously. And I saw her through the window and had my compound. I was going to try and get behind some brush and get a chance at her. And then I saw the yearling with her, and then out popped the buck. And, come to find out the other yearling was behind me. So she came towards me and the buck followed. And so I managed to get a shot on the ground about, 15, 20 yards. Still waiting for something over. I don't think I've killed anything 130 yet, but it's coming. It's coming in due time.
Just remember, it's all about the memories.
That's right.
For my first buck, I couldn't have been happier, man. Just finally, it almost felt like, I'm a Cubs fan, so it's like the curse of the goat. You just feel like no matter how close you get, it's just always out of reach. And so to finally be able to punch that ticket, it's definitely gets you hooked,
I'm worried about you, Cubs fan. I don't know, man. You may never kill a big one.
The old lovable losers.
No, I'm sorry. I had to pick on you a little bit.
Hey, you know what? That comes with the territory. I mean, trust me. After the Lions lost Sunday, I put something on Facebook that said, "Hey, welcome back to reality, all you Lions fans from us Bears fans. Don't forget, when in doubt, there's always next year." So,
yeah. Well, they had a good season. At least they're competitive now, so that's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's more than I could say about my Bears. So,
yeah.
Appreciate taking time out of your busy night and schedule to come join us and talk a little hunting and life, and we really appreciate it.
Heck, man, anytime. That's one thing I can do for a long time is talk about hunting.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it. Hopefully this will be the first of many times having you on. It's definitely been a pleasure for me. It's always nice when we can link up and talk with somebody who spent years and years being successful at it and pick your brain on, things that can help the everyday hunter get better, help us
Right.
get better, and just hear some of your cool stories. I mean, it's what it's all about.
And maybe next time we'll get into maybe a little bit more about strategies and setups and things like that, because I know I get a lot of guys that call me, friends that call me wanting to discuss what I think they should do in describing a particular deer and sending me Google map, overviews, aerials, and trying to help give them an idea, try to give them some help. And, I like doing that kind of stuff. I enjoy it. And seeing somebody be successful, brings me joy. And so, like I said, I just think it's important that we just celebrate each other's success and just represent the hunting world together rather than, being accusational and bickering and fighting amongst ourselves.
Well, we appreciate your time, good sir, and like I said, look forward to doing this more often and continue to grow ourselves and grow the show and look forward to seeing you do some awesome stuff this I know I don't know if you'll be out in the spring as much, but I'm sure you'll be out chasing this fall. So
No, I appreciate it. Really enjoyed it, guys. And you guys call me anytime.
well, thank you much. Have a good evening.
All right. See you.
Thanks, Spook.